Hi, everybody. I'm Junichi Kubo. I've worked in the financial industry for 30 years and many times dealt with the trust as a trustee, registrar, and the beneficiary. Today, I would like to talk about asset securitization and the trust. I first would like to explain what asset securitization is. To make it very simple, it is a sale by a corporation of its assets to obtain money necessary for its business operations. But certain types of assets, such as a large band of accounts receivable and large-sized real property, are illiquid, which means not easy to sell just as they are. So, to make the sale easier, illiquid assets have to be converted into securities which are ready to sell. And the trust is often used in asset securitization because of its unique features, which I would later point out. The following diagram shows how asset securitization basically works. The term securities used here includes ordinary securities such as corporate shares and bonds, as well as partnership interests and trust beneficiary interests. If the corporation wants to sell its assets and obtain money, it can do it simply in this way. Why do asset securitization and the trust have anything to do with this? Let's look at this from a viewpoint of the corporation. The assets the corporation wants to sell are normally expensive, and if the corporation tries to sell them just as they are, the corporation would have to find a buyer among large investors with ample money. The problem is that since the number of such large investors is limited, it is difficult for the corporation to sell the assets at a good price. Then, if many investors with decent money are gathered to form one buyer, since it gives the corporation a wider range of buyer candidates, it increases the chance of selling the asset at a higher price. Next, let's look at this from a viewpoint of the investor. If the sale of the assets is made in a simple way, the investors would have to hold and administer the asset by themselves. Unlike financial assets such as corporate shares and bonds, a large band of accounts receivable or a large size real property requires quite a bit of time and labor to administer. Generally speaking, however, the investors are motivated only to invest money and receive the financial return, and do not really want to spend time or labor for asset administration. Then, if the asset and a scheme to hold and administer such assets are put together in advance, it makes the sale easier. Let's look from another viewpoint of the investors. When many investors jointly buy the assets, each investor acquires a co-ownership in the assets. The co-ownership in the assets is rather difficult to sell, but the investors are generally willing to invest their money into something which they can sell as they want. Then, if co-ownership in the assets are converted into securities representing the interests of the investors in the assets, it makes the asset sale easier. The foregoing are basic reasons why asset securitization is used. The corporation sells its assets for money collected from a wide range of investors. A scheme to hold and administer the assets is set up beforehand and attached to the asset. The investors receive securities representing their interest in the assets. Then, what is the SPV? SPV is the abbreviation of Special Purpose Vehicle. It is sometimes called SPC or Special Purpose Company. The SPV is a scheme designed to hold and administer the assets on behalf of the investors. A variety of legal forms can be used as the SPV, such as a stock corporation, a limited liability company, a general partnership, a limited partnership, and a trust. Then, what do the investors require for the SPV? The first requirement is that the SPV properly hold and administer the assets on behalf of the investors. The second requirement is that the asset be secured for the investors when the SPV goes bankrupt. The trust well meets these requirements. When the trust is used as the SPV, the assets become the trust assets, the investors the trust beneficiaries. As for the first requirement, the trustee who owes the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and other duties as a fiduciary will hold and administer the assets on behalf of the investors. As for the second requirement, because the assets constitute the trust assets, they will be out of reach of the trustees' creditors upon the trustees' bankruptcy due to the effect of the independence of trust assets. The following diagram shows an example of asset securitization using the trust. First, the corporation entrusts the assets it wants to sell to a trust bank or trust company. At the trust bank or company, a scheme is set up to hold and administer the assets on behalf of the investors. The corporation receives a trust beneficiary interest in return for the entrusted assets. Now, the corporation is the settlor and the initial trust beneficiary, and the trust bank or company is the trustee. The corporation has not received any money yet. Then, the corporation divides up the beneficiary interest into portions and sells them to the investors. By doing so, the corporation receives money it needed. The investors are now the trust beneficiaries, and the trust bank or company, the trustee, will hold and administer the assets on their behalf. When the trust is used in asset securitization, it is often the case that the corporation converts the assets into trust beneficiary interests and sells them to the investors. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for watching.